Hello, good evening, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are on this planet. Welcome to the second episode of this series about Camille Flammarion. Today we have here in the studio with us our dear friend Alexandre Caldini. Hello, welcome, Alexandre. It's a great pleasure to be here with you and to have you here for this episode number 2 of this series. You're very welcome here.
Pleasure is mine, Munir. Thank you so much for inviting me. Thank you, Elsa, thank all the supporters of this, which I believe to be a very important initiative that you have. Just to recall, this is the third year we're doing that, right? We did that on the Need, first year, right? Second was Gabriel Delan, and now Camille Flammarion. So I'm very glad to be with you. Thank you so much for having me.
It's a great pleasure. So for those who don't know Alexandre Caldini, I'll quickly introduce him. He's a book writer, graduated in business with courses in the UK and USA as well. He works at his own company as a consultant and mentor for executives. He has been studying the Spiritism for the past 30 years, and he wrote 3 books on the matter. So I don't know if there's any, novelty here, another book, but as far as we know, he's got 3 books: Spiritism, Death According to Spiritism, and Life According to Spiritism. So the 2 books, Life and Death, together they sold over 100,000 copies. So all the proceeds from the sales of the books, they go to Casas André Luiz. André Luiz is his home. Is a 70-year-old non-profit NGO, and they provide shelter for around 500 patients and also free medical care to more than 1,700 patients with intellectual and or physical impairments. So Alexandre Caldini, he gives lectures on Spiritism in Spiritist centers around Brazil and abroad. He also works as a volunteer commentator for the Spiritist TV station Mundo Maior, Greater World, and the Spiritist radio station Boa Nova, Good News. On YouTube, one can find around 300 short videos where Alexandre explains the Spiritist views of life and death. So, our dear friend Alexandre Caldini, it's a great pleasure once again to have you here talking to us today about death and its mystery, before death, proofs of the existence of the soul. So I hand it over to you, Alexandre. So go ahead. It's a great pleasure.
Thank you, Munir. If you can please put my presentation on the view. Before that, just to say, it's wonderful to hear your voice, Munir. You have such a nice accent. You don't sound Brazilian at all, and it makes me shy to speak English after this very kind of British, beautiful English. Thank you so much. Well, friends, again, a pleasure to be here with you today. It's going to be a lot we're going to talk. This book is a 320-page book, but it's very interesting. I hope I can summarize in a way and show you a little bit of the mind of this person, very interesting person we're going to see today, called Camille Flammarion. So this is him. This is our friend Camille Flammarion. One of the pictures. Camille was French. He was born in 1842. He lived until the beginning of the 20th century. If you have not seen yet the 3 previous presentations on Camille Flammarion done by our good friend Charles from France, I recommend you do. It's 4 presentations. 3 were already done. The next one is going to be the last one about the life of Camille Flammarion. Very interesting. But anyhow, Flammarion was French. He was able, believe it or not, to read at the age of 4. Very, very, very intelligent, very special spirit probably. And he was able to write at the age of 4.5. And he was able to do some basic mathematics at the age of 5. Can you believe that? He was an astronomer, a very well-known and respected astronomer in France, and basically in the whole entire Europe and abroad as well. He was a researcher on everything, basically, but mainly on the psychological powers of our mind. He was a skeptical spiritualist, and after I wrote skeptical, I'm not sure, friends, if this is the most appropriate word for him. I would perhaps change that to scientific spiritualist. He's not skeptical, but he's very, 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 very serious about being scientific. He doesn't admit anything that's not, it has not any kind of proof, or anything that shows that that thing might be true. You're going to see that. He wrote nothing less than 37 books, most of them about astronomy. He was such an important person in France. He was honored with the Légion d'honneur, which I'm sure you know, it's a very important recognition of an important person in France. This book, as Munir said, it's called Death and Its Mystery. Actually, it's 3 books. The number 1 talks about the manifestations of the spirit before death. The second one talks about the moment of the death itself. And the third one is manifestations after the person has died. We're going to concentrate today on the number 1. We're going to talk only about this one, Death and Its Mystery Before Death. Subtitle, as mentioned, Proofs of the Existence of the Soul. The book is the cover of the book is this one. You can find it at Amazon UK for basically 18 sterling pounds. It was published in 1970 in France, and just a bit after that in the English version. 322 pages in 9 chapters. Believe me, there's plenty of cases, and more cases. I didn't count, but I would say, even though there's only 300 pages, it's about 200 cases, I would say. Some pages have 2 cases, so it's a bit annoying. After a while, you get kind of tired of the cases, but on the other hand, it's so interesting. And the things he says are so brilliant, from my point of view, that it was not a hustle to read this book. And he puts this phrase, trying to summarize what the book is all about. The plan of this work is outlined by its aim, to establish the positive proofs of survival. So he has a very, very substantial aim, right? He has to prove through this book that we do survive after death of the body. I tried to summarize here some of the comments on the book. What did I think of the book before starting, just for you to know? First, it's not a traditional spirits book, actually. Nothing to do with the Brazilian romances of spiritism. No, it's very serious, very scientific, and because of that, in my opinion, very interesting. Flammarion, as mentioned, is a man of science, so he's committed to the rigor of science. Everything is very rigorous on this book. He collects a lot of cases. He has more than 4,600 letters that he received from all over concerning all the factors of the soul: telepathy, vision without the eyes, as he calls, sight of futures events. We're to see 40 of those, believe it or not, today. In the whole entire book, interesting, he never uses the word spiritism. Is he a spiritist? I would say so. And if you see the presentation made by my colleague, Charles, he was the guy who was invited to make the speech on the funeral of Allan Kardec. So it was a very respected, important person within the spiritists in France and Europe during the late 19th century, beginning of 20th century. But he doesn't talk about spiritism in the book. So it's not a spiritist book. It's more of a scientific book. He's careful not to admit that there is mediumship. He doesn't use the word mediumship, but he doesn't admit that what he calls a foreign spirit, a spirit from outside, can communicate with us as spirits. We're going to see that a lot as well. But if he doesn't admit that, he does say very strongly that there is something else apart from the matter, apart from the material human being, apart from the brains. He said it's not possible that the brain can do all the things we're going to see today, what he calls as the psychology, supernormal faculties. Some observations by him that I put in the beginning that I thought were very interesting to understand the man behind this book, his imaginary, his thinking. Take a look how wonderful it is. He says that a science man has got to be honest, frank, independent, and rational. That sounds obvious, doesn't it? But we're not. We're not all that all the time. The man of science can tell only what he knows. Think about spiritism. How many people you know within spiritism that say the most absurd things, that create something about after you die, what's going to happen without any proofs, right? He's honest, frank, independent, rational before everything. His duty is to research and to study. We're still seeking, and we do not pretend to have found the answer, still less to have a revelation of the truth from heaven. This is so simple and so important, because who are we to say we know what's going on? We know what happened after we die. We know how God works in nature. We don't. We might think that some things might be true. That's the beauty about him. He doesn't affirm everything that he does know. He doesn't know. Religion. What does Camille Flammarion thinks about religion? We have no right to deceive anyone, even from the best motives, in order to offer him a transitory happiness. How many times have you seen someone in any religion to say, no, calm down. Your son's going to be now side by side with God. Your father certainly is resting now, is with your relatives. We really do not know. We don't know. We might think it seems like it will go like this because of this, and that. But he says religion gives a false consolation. To all those who have lost someone dearly loved, the very term just God or the justice of God seems an insult to reality. That's the false consolation of religion. I have to go kind of fast here because there's much to see, but I think we should think about these things because we are very unethical sometimes on promising things to people who have lost, quote unquote, a relative. That might not be true. So I think his way of seeing spiritism is very interesting, very serious, very honest. He says even the following about Voltaire. One can be anti-clerical and a deist like Voltaire, meaning one can believe in God, one can know that God exists, but doesn't have to be with a religion. Chapter 1, let's start seeing some of the chapters. This chapter is called The Greatest of Problems. Which is this problem? Which problem is the greatest of one? Which one do you think it is? Death. That's the greatest problem. Camille said the following, that death has been the subject of the preoccupation of us for the whole entire history of humanity. And sorry, I'm not going to read everything because there's too much to read. I've put everything there, so if you want to see it, I suggest you come later on, you stop the presentation so you can see and read the full argumentation by Camille Flammarion, right? I'm going to read some of the slides, some of them are just talk within what's inside. This one, for example, he says, we are not fair with death because we consider birth as a very nice, beautiful, important, natural thing. But we don't consider death to be natural. We consider that to be a punishment or something like that. He said, that's childish. We should talk about death. Another interesting thing about Camille Flammarion, he doesn't talk about this. He doesn't talk about reincarnation, not on this book at least. He just ignores reincarnation because it's not a spiritist book, right? Chapter 2, materialism, what does he say? He goes to talk a little bit about God in this chapter. And he basically says, God, the way we understand God, have never existed. God the Father, take a look how hard of this affirmation is. God the Father, Jehovah, Jupiter, they're all symbolic. They have never existed. We do not understand God. All the evidence shows this. What does it prove? Our own spiritual inferiority. Very interesting, isn't it? Remember that Spiritism says God is not a person. God is the supreme intelligence, the root cause of everything, right? So everything happens from God, let's put it this way. But that's as far as we go in Spiritism. I think he's right. We don't understand God. We're not yet there. We don't have yet the full understanding or a better understanding or better rationale to understand something as huge as the concept of God. And he says something other very interesting. We used to think that God is like ourselves, that God thinks the same way we do. So if we are envy, God is envious as well. If we're mad, God is mad as well. If we punish people, God punishes people as well. If we forgive, God forgives as well. He says that might not be true. God is much bigger than us. He makes an interesting comparison. He says, we might be as far as the thought of God as a caterpillar is far away from our way of thinking. But he says, but there is something. There is a constructive force that governs the whole entire universe, an invisible thinking force that governs the world and the atoms. And matter right? Matter, the materialist part of us, just obeys. So we're not governed by the body, by the materialist part. We govern, the spirit or this force governs the whole thing. About thinking, it's very straightforward on this one. Men in general are stupid. Not wow, it's very straightforward, isn't it? Not one of 100 of them thinks. Not 1% of the men, according to him, thinks. Woman as well, right? He's talking about humans being here. He says men who think are the exception. He might be too far out here. I don't think he's too far out, but he might be. But it's something for us to think, right? What are we doing in our lives? He says, men, the only thing we do, we eat, we drink, we reproduce, we sleep, and we go after the money. But we don't have time for philosophy. We should have time for philosophy. He says the spirit overrules the body. To believe that the unconscious, the body, can create the conscious is in principle contradictory. The spirit overrules the body. The atoms do not govern. They are governed. Is it obvious? Not to many people. Many, and I have scientists in my family. I talked to two scientists, physical scientist and a biological science. And both of them told me they knew Flammarion because he's an important person. They are not spiritists, but they both said the following: science doesn't occupy itself with the spiritual part of the being. It doesn't exist for science. He says the opposite. He says we're not governed by the matter. We're governed by the spirit, by something else, by the mind. But is it the soul or the brain? What's the difference? The soul is the spirit, and the brain is the physical part inside of our scope. Is that correct? Look what he says here. The good and the evil, perseverance in this will, the spirit of sacrifice, heroism, contempt for pain, the organic insensibility of the martyrs when they defy the most atrocious tortures, renunciation, devotion to virtues and the vices, friendship as well as hatred, charity as well as envy. Are they not all of soul's independence of the brain? Meaning these feelings, these sentiments, these values, these moral values. It says, are you serious? This comes from the brain? This comes from cells? No. I don't think so. That's basically what he's saying there. He's going to come back to that afterwards. How important are we? We believe we're very important, don't we? We believe God is taking care of us all the time, don't we? I very often say in my speeches, God is not looking at you. God is, as the Spiritism says, God is governing the whole universe. You're just part of it. Let's see what Camille Flammarion says. We attribute a certain importance to ourselves. We imagine that God occupies himself of us. We're not great matter. And even the whole humanity itself is likewise of little importance. He said, look how brilliant this expression from Flammarion. We are thinking atoms on a moving atom, meaning we, the people, are just atoms compared to Earth, which is the moving atom, right? And this moving atom, Earth, is 1,000,000 times smaller than the sun. So even Earth is nothing compared to the sun. And even the sun, which itself is an atom when you compare to the galactic stellar nebula. And even the stellar nebula, which is only one universe, surrounded by an infinity of other universes. Take a look at this picture. Look how many, this is a real picture, right? This is not a drawing, it's a picture from a telescope from the European Space Agency. Very new picture. This was released by the end of last year, more or less, mid to end of last year. Look how many galaxies you see there. Look how many planets, how many stars. And this is a very tiny part of the whole entire universe. This is just a little bit of what we don't even see. So are we a great thing? Are we important? That's basically what he's saying. We're nothing compared to this amazing entire universe. Chapter 3, what is man? Does the soul exist? Let's see what he says. Have we a soul? And then he corrects himself. Or to speak more exactly, is man a soul? That's something I always try to say as well. People here, at least in Brazil, say, oh, my spirit, when my spirit go this, when I die, my spirit's going to do this. You don't have a spirit. You are a spirit. It's a small difference, not so small, because if we really believe we're not body, we're spirits, you don't have a spirit. Slavery is out for 100 years. You are a spirit, right? Skepticism. Look how skeptical he is. The most irresistible evidence ought to be held in suspicious and be severely examined. What is more evident than the passage of the sun and the entire heaven above our heads? If I say, the sun is a disk that moves across the sky, I'm stating more than I know, and I risk of making a mistake. We judge the universe by the reality existing in our mind, in our brain. It's a strange form of reasoning to conclude that our ideas constitute the reality itself. So I won't read more of this, but basically what he's saying is don't consider what you think is true by truth. You have to have evidence. You have to study. You have to observe. You have to be open to the new things, of course, very much so. But don't imagine that you know much more than you really know. Spirits. Does he believe in spirits? It's possible that there might exist about us not only the invisible things, but even invisible, intangible beings with whom our senses do not put us in touch. He's talking about spirits, right? He says, there might exist spirits. But look at this. I do not say that such do exist, but I say that they might exist. He's a scientist, remember. He doesn't believe anything he's not able to prove. We're not justified in thinking that what we see represents the only reality. Who would have imagined the microbes before they were discovered? It's true, right? Maybe spirits exist, but we don't see, or some people do see them, the vidents, right? I don't know how to say that in English. But he's saying, well, be careful. He doesn't position himself as a spiritist. Again, he was a spiritist to the point that he made the speech on the tomb of Allan Kardec at his funeral. But he's very careful about not stating things he's not sure. Body and soul, who owns who? I have a body. It's not my body that has me. Again, very obvious, but we have to have that in mind, right? You're not your body. You're yourself. You are your personality. You are your knowledge. Your body is just an instrument. Man is an intelligence served by organs. Brain or spirit. The study of the stars through telescope cannot be legitimate attribute to the instrument, nor the eye, nor the brain, but only the spirit of the astronomer which seeks and finds. Remember, he's an astronomer, right? So he says it's not the instrument, it's me, it's my spirit who is looking and taking conclusions. How is it possible that material cerebral secretions could produce intellectual personalities? When we exercise our power of abstraction and generalization, we affirm the existence of the soul. What does it mean there? Some scientists say spirit doesn't exist. The soul does not exist. It's all brain reactions. It's chemicals. It's brain cells, I'm sorry, getting together and producing all this. He says it's not possible. It's outside of a chemical reaction. It's more than that. Chapter 4, Supernormal Factors of the Soul. Absolute reality. We're not certain of nothing. To imagine that we can attain certainty is, in any sort of study, is to be rather naive. We are certain of nothing. Our senses, our powers of observation, our intellect are not yet, I put the yet there, fitted to discover what? Absolute reality. We don't know things. We're in search, always in search. So we have to be modest. We have to be humble to understand that we don't have all the answers. I think this is very important in Spiritism. Because again, I see people within the spiritualistic community giving answers right through to people who search for hope, who search for an explanation, sometimes saying things that makes no sense at all. So I would say, let's stay with what we know, what Kardec has said, because he did profound research. Outside of that, better be careful. He lists here some of the unsuspected powers of human beings. The will acting without words at a distance, meaning we would see that, but meaning you imagine something, you say, I want this to happen, out far away from you, it does happen. Second, psychic transmissions, telepathy. Third, mental vision of the spirit, the prevision of the future. He's going to talk a lot about that. Fourth, manifestations of the dead. at the moment of death or after. You probably have heard about all those. Maybe you have experienced yourself, right? A person is dying, say in Kyoto, in Japan, and you are in Curitiba, in Paraná, and you feel that or you see that, you say, oh, my cousin is passing away. How do you know that? That's what he's going to show. And now we start the cases, right? First case here, he presents one lady, Madame Constance. She's the wife of the French Minister of Interior. You're going to see he puts very important people as witnesses of these cases, probably trying to prove that they're not silly people, they're not unpolite people, they're not uneducated people, but on the contrary, very serious, important, and highly educated people. This lady, when she was married already to the minister received a package at his house. And for some reason, she said to the maid, "Do not open, don't open that case, that box." And she didn't allow anyone to open the box. Why? For no reason, but she knew that she couldn't open. They sent this box to the police, and there was dynamite inside. There was a bomb inside. If they had opened, the whole family would be dead. How did she know that? We don't know. Second was when this same lady was younger. She had diphtheria, and the doctor prescribed her muriatic acid to pass on her throat. And when they came to apply that to her throat, she said, no, I don't want it. This is going to kill me. I don't want it. This is going to kill me. And she didn't accept at all. Then they saw the pharmacist made a mistake. Instead of put muriatic acid, he took sulfuric acid. If she had accepted that, she would be dead. It wasn't just a mistake, but somehow she realized that. Isn't this amazing? And he says, this is not transmission of thought, nor telepathy. It's what he calls divination. Why is not transmission? Because no one knew the package, apart from the guy who sent the package, of course. And no one, not even the pharmacist, knew that he had changed the acid, because it was not on purpose, right? So how did she know that? Very interesting, isn't it? It's not transmission of thought. This is Robert Schumann, the great German composer. He was saying he was composing some music. He got very sad, and he started crying, and saw a lot of funeral things, coffins, people crying a lot. And he didn't know why, but he was very sad. But he kept composing the music. A couple of days later, he received a letter from his sister-in-law saying that his brother Edward had died that very same moment. So he was going to give the name for this music as Corpus Fantasy. You can see the name there in German. But then he changed it to Nocturne, which is a very heavy music. You can take a look. So how did he know his brother was dying? Probably transmission of thought from the brother to himself, right? This is a very interesting one as well, because it doesn't involve a person. This gentleman, chief engineer of the government of Morocco, he had an electric clock at his house, at one specific living room. He was in another room, and then suddenly he looked at his personal watch, and it was 20 to midnight. And he thought, that watch of mine, which was in a different room, has batteries to last enough for 4 years. It's been 3 years and a bit, so it's not yet the time to run away the battery. Maybe in a few months I have to change the battery. Later on, he went and looked at the watch in the wall in the other room, right? And the clock had stopped exactly the same hour, 11:40 p.m. Exactly the same hour that this occurred to himself. And it was not a problem with the battery. He just changed the pendule, and the clock started working again. So this is interesting because he saw something without an intervention of anyone. I mean, it was a relationship between him and the watch. Weird, isn't it? But somehow he knew it. 2 other cases here. One guy dreamed that the king of Italy had been assassinated. He told his wife. A couple of days later, the news came saying that he was assassinated the very same night. A friend of the other guy was having some beers with a friend. He left home, but he kept thinking about his friend who was there having the beers. And then he saw his friend with the scalp broken, a lot of blood. He got very nervous. This really happened. This friend of his, after the beer, went home and committed suicide, breaking his skull and dying there. So he saw the It's suicide. Maybe the suicidal thought about him and transmitted this image to him. This was interesting as well. Lady Ardley, she was only 16 and she had measles. But then she was feeling well and she went to take her first bath, right, in a bathtub. And she heard a voice when she was undressing. She heard a voice, "Open the door." She didn't pay attention to that. Open the door. She didn't pay attention. Third time, open the door. She went and opened the door. As soon as she entered the tub, she fainted. She had just the time to press the bell, and then suddenly the helper, the maid, came to the room and saved her. She was going to be drawn if she couldn't do that. And then Flammarion asks, "What was this voice? What did it came from?" Probably from the girl herself, who had the thought that she was weak. But he says the human soul is gifted with powers unknown to the science today. So he doesn't take a conclusion. If he doesn't know, he doesn't know. He just notices and says there is something else. Our dear Jeanne d'Arc, so well known, the saint from the Catholic Church, that was burned by the Catholic Church. Why? Because she heard voices, right? And her voices advised her in many things. She was probably a medium for us, right? There's plenty of examples. If you read the life of Jeanne d'Arc, which is very interesting, by Leon Denis, he mentions all this. But basically, she identified the king among 300 people dressing just like themselves because the voice told her. She said for one of the soldiers going to die in 3 days, and he did. So she had this power as well, Jeanne d'Arc. Chapter 5, the will. He says here he's going to prove that the will alone acts without any action. You just think about something, and you may be able to do that, to materialize that thing, to make that thing happen. Plenty of cases going to show us. Dr. Okorovitz, I guess it says like this. A patient of his was a psychiatrist. One of his patients was trying to commit suicide. And he thought about going to the house of this patient, and he got there, he saw her just about to jump in the window. It was night, it was dark, and he was on the shadow. She could not see him. The very same moment, he started thinking on her, saying, "Don't jump, don't jump. You should not jump. Stay there." And then she went back. After that, he was talking to her, said, "Why you didn't jump?" She said, "I thought you were with me. I could feel you side by side with me, sometimes supporting me from down up, and sometimes behind me, and you didn't want me to jump." So you see, Flammarion says, the human will is able to make itself felt at a distance. This guy, just by the power of his mind, was able to avoid a suicide. Mental suggestion, this is very interesting. Another guy, Monsieur Schmoll, which is a colleague of Flammarion, he's also an astronomer. His wife was sleeping at a desk, at a chair, and he said, "Let me do an experiment with her." He started thinking, "Wake up, wake up, wake up. I want you to wake up, wake up, wake up, wake up. I want you to wake up." He started saying that. Nothing happened. Then he quitted. A little bit later, he started again. Nothing happened. Then he quitted. Just 10 minutes after, she wakes up and says, What do you want? Why do you want me to wake up? Why are you annoying me?" He said, "No, I didn't call you." She said, "No, you did call me. You were calling me all the time. I could hear you." So again, he says, the brain is an apparatus. We're certain that the only certain thing about it is that we cannot deny that these things happen, because there's many examples. Mind reading, that's another interesting thing. Dr. Macario says the following, all examples, right? That a somnambulist perceives your thought, and it makes very little difference to him or to her whether you speak Greek, Latin, or Arabic. We have seen that in Spiritism, right? And the medium sometimes speaks a language that he does not know. But the interesting thing is the following observation that Flammarion puts. When a person talking to the medium, right, talks in a language that he, the person, understands, and the medium doesn't, the medium responds properly. But if the person who is talking to the medium reads something on a language this person does not understand, the medium does not respond. What's the conclusion of that? You don't talk with words. You don't talk with language. You talk with your mind. So if the guy talking to the spirit is talking through a language he understands or she understands, he or she is emitting thoughts. If you're reading something you don't understand, if I'm reading Greek or Japanese, I don't understand there. I'm emitting nothing. I'm not sending any image because I don't understand that. So the medium, the spirit, is not able to decodify that as well. Interesting, isn't it? The soul is existing independently of the body. It says there's no doubt the action of the spirit upon the physical organism lead us to conclude that the soul exists independently of the body. And says normally when you receive an information, it's someone who is really suffering, someone who is, I don't know, in a dying or in an accident, a car crash or something. So he sends you this information. Telepathy and physical transmissions, he says it's independent of time as it is independent of the space, meaning you can go to the future and see the future because the future does not really exist. Time is a concept we have created. He says, one person, a patient of this doctor, could see anything he was holding on his hand behind her. Many examples. This lady, she suddenly saw her helper all wet, and this lady has just drowned in a river. How can I explain that, right? This other one, this gentleman, his child was drowned in a river, and he dreamed that the body was in this part of the river and the body was there. So there's plenty of examples like that. But the important thing, it says, whether one attributes these perceptions to unconscious, to the subconscious, subliminal, etc., it makes no difference. Telepathy transmissions differs from transmission of the light, it says, because the light vanishes after a while. The transmission of thought is perfectly clean, gets to you. That has a question. Is there a proper milieu to serve this transmission? Is that a meaning that transmits thought? We don't know, right? I want to speed up a bit because we're running late here. There's plenty to say yet. He says it's not impossible that in the future we're going to be able to look at this, we're going to be able to talk to people far away from us just by thinking. I believe so as well. I have that with a friend of mine who lives in the US. I think of him and calls me, or the vice versa. Who are us to say that's not going to be possible one day? Might be. No? It might be. Chapter 8, vision without eyes. That's very interesting. To understand, we understand things, we receive impressions that does not come through our senses, not through our eyes. This example is very interesting. There was a priest, a very young priest in the seminary. During the night, he was sleeping. He would not wake up. He was a somnambulist, right? He would take a paper and write his sermons with eyes closed. And then he would read everything he has written with eyes closed. He would say, nah, this is not good. He would cross it and rewrite part of the sermon with the eyes closed. And he would use that sermon the next day. Then his boss did the example, took a piece of cardboard and put on his chin so he could not see what he was writing. Didn't make any difference. He kept writing with his eye closed. So we don't use the eye to read. We can use other means to read. Same here. One guy said to the other, can you take the second book on the second shelf and read to me what's written on page 94, second paragraph? And this spirit, the spirit of this person read the exact sentence on a closed book in the shelf. Same here. This is a very well-known somnambulist, Alexis Didier. He lived in 1826 to 1886. He could read books that were closed still on the plastic. Not on the plastic. At that time there was no plastic, but who were closed. No one had opened the book. They would say, read page 4th and 4th, this paragraph. He would read the whole page with the book closed. And Flammarion was so interested. He says very serious people are experiencing all these things. He calls Alexandre and Victor Hugo, both very well known, right? Very respected people. And they saw all this happening, and mainly Victor Hugo. He says, from this time on, from the second sight, Victor Hugo, among a number of others, is a defender of all these psychological things. They call even Robert Houdin. Houdin is not Houdini, right? Houdini was in America after Houdin. Houdin was a very, very famous magician in France, and they called him to come and see if this is a fraud. And he studied, said there's no fraud. He attested by a letter. He was astonished, and there was no way that this could be a fraud. So again, he tries to prove all the time that these things existed. Well, I'll jump some cases, otherwise we won't have time to see it all. This is very interesting. A lady was very ill. She went to the doctor for a surgery, and she was hypnotized, and they did the surgery without her feeling anything when she was hypnotized. Her daughter was also hypnotized, and her daughter could see inside of the body of the mother and start saying, the problem is like this, this, and this. The left lung is totally dead. It's paralyzed. It's not working anymore. The right lung is okay. The heart is like this. The liver is like that. She started describing the whole thing, and she said, my mom won't leave until 2 more days. And that was true. The next day, the lady passed away. They made an autopsy, and every single detail that lady told about the mom's internal organs were correct. So he says, is it soul of the dead or is metal waves? How do we see this? And Flammarion says, I do not wish to maintain any hypotheses for the observations that are not yet sufficient. Science is not made in a day. It's not impossible that either the transmission of subconscious thoughts or telepathic cerebral waves are concerned in this case. So it can be anything, he says. Was it a spirit? He says, we don't know. We must always remain in the sphere of what is known. I cannot see the transmission of thought in the act of the seminaries of Bordeaux as something else. I mean, he's always questioning. He says, I do not admit, but I don't have a better explanation yet. Chapter 8, future events. There's plenty of... this is very interesting. He says, if we can see the future events, where is free will? Can we decide our life? And basically, he puts a lot of cases. I'm going to jump over there. Only this page, 7 different cases. I recommend if you're interested, come back to the presentation, stop the presentation and see them. But basically, he says, that he's going to say this here. There's no problem with free will and the view of the future. Let's see how he says that. It's a mistake to suppose that fatality and determinism are identical. In fatalism, man is a passive being who waits events in which are inevitable. In determinism, man is active, a contributing cause. One does not see what must happen, but what will happen. Something will always happen. It is this something which we see without its being inevitable. Meaning we can act, we can change things. It's in our hands. Because, look at here, because we're affected by many things. So many things affect our lives. And this is going to promote the future for us. Heredity, education, temperament, health, will, many things. It says basically, it's just like if we were on a ship cruising the ocean. You have certain freedom. You can walk through the ship, but you cannot leave the ship. That's the thing. We can act in our lives to a certain point, but there's some things that are there for us. But anyhow, he says, we are artisans of our destiny. Each one of us can determine what we do in our lives. So we still have options to design what's going to come. My understanding here, friends, is that he says, when you see something, it's already a product of what you have done. So you're not going to change anyhow, because you have already changed that. Many things contribute to that ending, to that consequence. He says, this is very interesting. He says, even the hour of our death is already established. Why? Because our acts are linked together, and they're going to lead us through our death sometimes. And nothing can alter that, this chain of events. Ernesto Bozano, the well-known spiritist as well, says, ni libre arbitre, ni determinisme absolu. During the incarnate existence of the spirit, but conditional liberty, meaning you have a certain liberty. The sight of the future is not at all a contradiction with the utmost extent of human liberty and free will, meaning you can determine your thing. There's a case of Schopenhauer as well. I'm not going to waste time here. Read it afterwards. Many other cases. Imagine I put here 40 cases. There's probably more than 200. Just going to our conclusion, so we don't we don't overcome our 60 minutes time, right? Basically, if I want to summarize, friends, what Camille Flammarion says on this fairly tiring book, because there's too many cases, but also very interesting book. So if you're interested on telepathy, viewing of the future, etc., I do recommend you read it. But the conclusions would be the following, according to him: the future can be seen. Supranormal faculties, clairvoyance, prescience, crosses the limit of time and space. Time and space limits are within our education. According to him, they do not really exist. And he gives a lot of examples, astronomical examples, to prove that time and space do not exist. It's impossible to attribute matter to the brain or to a chemical combination the intellectual power of seeing without eyes, of foreseeing future events, or of knowing what's passing at a distance. Meaning, it's not matter, it's not your brain, it's not your brain cells, it's not a composition of carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, etc., that's going to determine if you're a good person or bad person, if you are a patient or nervous, if you want to do this or that. He says it's something else, and something else he calls the soul or the spirit. The observations prove that the existence of the spirit, endowed with intrinsic faculties, independent of the physical senses. So it's clearly stating here that the spirit does exist. His doubt is not on the existence of the spirit. His doubt is the spirit able to communicate to other spirits? That's his doubt. Fifth, if the soul or the spirit is not a production of the brain, if it's distinctive from the cerebrospinal nervous system, if it exists in itself, there's no reason why it should disintegrate with it. What is he saying here? If the spirit is independent of the body, if the spirit is not the matter, it's not materialistic, so it doesn't die, right? What is disintegrate, what dies, is your body, not yourself. You're not your body. 6, the spirit might be our own, and it has not yet been proved the intervention of spirits, foreign spirits, to those of the experimenters. Nevertheless, the hypothesis remains. Meaning, again, he doesn't accept that the spirit can influence another being, influence another spirit. But he says, but it is a hypothesis. He's not denying either. He's saying, I don't know, it might be true, it might be not true. That's being scientific, right? He doesn't affirm anything just because he likes to, because he believes so. 7, psychic observations prove that the universe is not limited by limited to the things that can be reached by the 5 or 6 senses derived from our animal inheritance. Meaning, it's not just the smell, view, hearing, touch. The senses that we use normally that define the whole thing. There's more than that, and our senses are not able to perceive that. Some people are able to perceive, right? You know, some people who do perceive when you see some. And the last conclusion is to understand or not to understand a phenomenon proves nothing against its existence. This is beautiful, isn't it? Beautiful. We should all have this in the wall of our homes. It's not because you don't understand that something does not exist. It's not because you believe that it exists either, right? It might exist, it might not exist, independently of you believing or not, understanding or not. So let's not take ourselves as the measure for reaffirming that something exists or not. This, for me, was the most important thing I learned with Camille Flammarion. His pure sense of honesty, scientific honesty, intellectual honesty, which is very beautiful, isn't it? So if you put all this together, the conclusion is the following. Future can be seen. It crosses limits of time and space. It's impossible to attribute it to matter. Observations prove the existence of the spirit. The spirit should not disintegrate with the matter. There's no proof of the intervention of foreign spirits. Not everything can be perceived by our regular senses. And not to understand something is not a proof of its non-existence. this was the conclusion of the whole entire book, and I have 2-3 more minutes I'd like to use on this. Once I was given this opportunity to talk to you by Elsa and Munir, for whom I thank again, and I started reading this book, I decided to do the following. I went to my social media, to my Instagram, and I asked my 34,000 followers, it's plenty of people for me, I believe, to give me testimonials of anything they have felt or seen that sounds weird, like seeing the future or something. And I received quite a few. I didn't have time to look at all of them. I looked at some, and I'd like to show you 3 or 4. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4 cases, which I think are very emblematic of this. So again, these cases are not in the book. I received myself from people, some people I know, including here. First, the most tough one was about the aircraft accident with Latam. At that time was TAM, the name of the airline company. You probably, if you're Brazilian, certainly you knew this. It was a very bad accident. 299 people died in this accident. It was in São Paulo, in the city of São Paulo, in the domestic airport inside of town, which is surrounded by buildings, and was awful. So 3 different people that do not know each other said to me the same thing. 2 of them, one is a very good friend of mine. The other one is a young lady, which it's from my family. And the third one was a friend of my hairdresser. Only one of them is a spiritist. The others are not. The 3 said the following, that they saw flames. 2 of them saw flames on the very same, that place, a day or 2 before the accident, or hours before the accident. They saw a lot of flames there. They got scared. They didn't know what was it. In the following hours or the following day, the accident happened. The third person lives by the airport, and this one is a spiritist. And she had her attention called to the window. She went to the window, and she was looking, and kind of like a voice told her, "Look at the left." When she looked at the left, she saw the place where the accident was going to happen, plenty of people in white. She said that for me, there were doctors and nurses and medical practitioners. People were there waiting to help the people who were going to disincarnate immediately after, I don't know how many minutes or hours or after the plane crashed at the very same place. So for her, for this lady, was an advice that spirits were there already waiting for these people to help them in this very tough situation. The other one was told by a friend, a person in my family. She said she had a dream that she was going to her work, and she always does the same. She goes the same way to her work, and she always cross in one of the corners where there's red lights. And in her dream, she was crossing, and a red car came all the way really fast and hit her and killed her. And she waked up. Good thing it was just a dream, etc. The following day, she was going to work. She didn't even remember anymore the dream. And when she was going to cross that very same spot, the red light the light just turned red for the cars. She was going to cross them for no reason. She went back half a step, and the red car came all the way, passing through the red light in a very high speed. If she didn't go back 1 step or half a step back, she would have been hidden. So she said that for me, it's very clear. And this young lady, she's very interesting. She had many different experiences. The next one is going to be with her as well. And she also saw the plane crash as well. And she said there's a difference between the dreams that are of something that's going to happen in the future and the others. The ones that's going to happen in the future is very clear. The other ones are very wild. So when it's very clear, she knows it's a prediction of the future. The other one with a very well-known person in São Paulo, a very well-known politician. His brother told me this. Their mother had died. They were very young. They were 8 and 10. And they were, of course, very sad. And the father decided to take them to their home, to their country home in Campos do Jordão, which is by the mountain in São Paulo state. And they were going up, and the road is really curvy and steep. And suddenly, this today a man of, 50 years old or so, he felt very strongly the perfume of his mom. He told his father, "Dad, I'm feeling the perfume of mom here. No one else was feeling. But the dad said, okay, well, maybe it's under the seat here. The father just parked the car side by side with the road for them to look if there was a lost perfume bottle under the seat. At that very same moment, a huge truck came all the way down in a very high speed. The truck has lost its brakes, right? They would have been smashed by the truck if they had not gone to the side. He said, I'm sure, I'm not spiritist, anything like that, but I'm sure my mom saved us that day. She advised us to move away. And the last of the examples here is a funny one about lottery. By the way, there's a case about lottery as well in the book of Flammarion. This one happened to my family member as well. She never. There's a game in Brazil, lottery in Brazil called Jogo do Bicho, right? It's animal lottery or something like that. So you choose a number, and the number represents, for example, butterfly. If you dream of butterflies, either 13, 14, 15, or 16. If you dream of a deer, it's 93, 94, etc., and so forth. And she dreamed of four numbers actually, 4, 4, 4, 2. And there was a man where she works. There is a man there. He always play with this game. And he always tells her the following: when you dream of something, tell me if you dream of an animal or a number, because then I'm going to play the number or the animal that you have dreamed. And she never did. One day she dreamed of this number, 4442. And she came in the morning to work, and she was going to tell this gentleman for him to use the numbers to play. But the man didn't come that morning. He came only just by lunchtime or so. And when he came, she said, "Oh, it happened this, and that. I dreamed of this number 4442, etc. Oh, pity, I didn't have time to play. Pity, etc. Because the play was in the morning." So he went for lunch, and then he came back very suddenly. She said he was totally pale, like he saw ghosts or something. He says, "Please tell me that you did play those numbers." She said, No, I never did. I never played lottery. I don't believe in lotteries. He said, because those were the exact numbers today. You would be really rich if you had played. Oh my goodness, etc. Can you believe that? It's interesting. Yeah? And unfortunately, she did not play, so she lost all this chance of being rich. But closing the whole conversation with you guys today, I put a sentence by our beloved author here, love the author Camille Flammarion. Flammarion says, perhaps it's imprudent to ask questions about the future, even when one does not believe in them, because one's peace of mind suffers inevitably, and it's not necessary to cause anxiety. What is he saying here? This is a message for you. You to go to that lady that play cards or play búzios or divines the future. It might be true. This person might have the ability to do so, or might be just a fraud. I would say most of the time is a fraud. But what Camille Flammarion says here is what Spiritism says. Do not mind about the future. Just take care of your life. Build your own life day by day by doing what you do better and better and better. Do not mind about your past, who I was in previous incarnation. Do not mind what's going to happen to you tomorrow morning, if you're going to marry or not, if you're going to be promoted or not. It doesn't matter. Just work on your life. That's the best solution for all of us. And I ended here with a few minutes after. Sorry to have passed, and then come back to Munir now. Thank you so much for being with me.
Thank you, Caldini. It's been a wonderful presentation, and I was wondering, perhaps a lifetime is not enough to read all these books, because it's not just a question of reading the books, it's this studying the books, because these are books that deserve special attention, and there are so many. As you mentioned before, we started with Léon Denis, and then Gabriel Delanne, and now Camille Flammarion. And the beauty of Camille Flammarion's work is the fact that, yes, he's a scientist 100% of the time. As a scientist, he looks at Spiritism from the strictly scientific point of view. So when he says that he's not a Spiritist as such, it's because he accepts what he can understand, what seems to be reasonable. So, using his mind and his background to analyze things. So he gives us a confidence that whatever he put his fingers on, he had this look. And he, is very prolific, as I mentioned last week, in terms of publications, and not only in astronomy, but also, regarding spiritist phenomena. So, these books seems to be, one of these precious, pearls that, we have.
Munir, I was a bit tired reading the book because there's so many cases. I mentioned there's so many cases. At the very end, he even said, "I'm sorry for putting so many cases." It's interesting he says that, but it's so interesting. And again, as you said, for me, the best learning there is that what a fantastic person he was, because he was honest. I think the word is honest, and I think we should all be honest. We can be spiritists without accepting a lot of I can't say the word in here, but a lot of stupid things, let's put it this way, that have come to spiritism that there's no proof. We don't need it. And when he says that religions give a false hope to people, we have to be careful not to do the same in spiritism. We have to be honest with ourselves first, with spiritism a second, and with Kardec, and with the person who we were talking to. And this guy is very brilliant. I mean, he is a spiritist, but he doesn't have to accept everything just because it's nice to believe in that. So for me, it was a great learning, great reading. And I have to thank you again, you and Elsa, because if it wasn't by you, I would not read it because it's so tough. It's so big in English, but it was wonderful. So thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. That's very good. So we have here some comments. Our dear friend Solomon is saying hello. Thank you for this wonderful series. Thank you, Alexandre Caldini. And
Pleasure,
also, thank you, Munir. Thank you, Solomon, for your presence here. And also, we have a comment from Pietro Pauletto da Costa, watching from Brazil. Congratulations, Professor Alexandre. So,
Professor Camille Flammarion, Piero. The guy's amazing. It's really cool. Yeah. Thank you for being with us.
Yes, and it's really nice. I've mentioned this before, but the fact that we know so little about the world, we know so little. We should be humble to say that as a scientist, we can say, I understand this bit. My theory or my quarter here explains very few things. So it would be too much of presumption to suppose that I explain everything else, because I'm specialized on something that is very small, very limited. So our materialistic sciences, they prove things regarding the material world, and very few of them, very few of these phenomena that we have, they can be explained. But when you look, for instance, I had the opportunity to write once, a module for a course in degree in physics, and that was about astrobiology. And what we find there is most people accept this theory. Oh, a few accept these, but some others, they like that. They prefer that theory more. So we see how much uncertainty there is. So and basically, we are blind people, putting our hands on the shoulders of other people who can see slightly better than us, but they suppose that, yes, there is this. I think this, yes, this is what is going on. So, and I think that spiritual life, the life in the spiritual world, is the basis of everything else. It's like being born and living all my life in an oasis as a Bedouin and trying to explain whatever is going around on earth, How?
When you said that, I remember something he says here in the book as well. Flammarion says, imagine if there was always clouds around Earth, around the sky. He would not know about the moon, about the sun, about the stars, because that's all it's clouds. So how can you say there's something if you don't know? But what you said calls my attention to other thing, if I may say something. Once I make a lot of speech, people start asking me things, and I try to be very honest as well. When I say, I don't know. As you said, some people believe this, some people believe that. People ask me, for example, why there are so many, how do you call that disease? Alzheimer people, people with Alzheimer, and autists, how do you say in English, autists?
Yeah.
How can I respond that, Munir? I have no way to find an answer to that in Spiritism. But I searched for that, and I saw some very well-known, famous Spiritists saying, no, it's because they have seen in the past is a it's a punishment by God. It gets I don't have a hair because I had hairs. My hairs would be like this. It's amazing how people can say anything, and other people accept those things without having a restriction. The other thing, recently, in one of my last speeches, the question was, will I meet my mom or my son or my dad or my grandma when I die? She's already dead. I said the following: there is no guarantee. Why? Then explain why. I didn't say you're not going to meet. I said there's no guarantee. No, you can't imagine how I received of response.
How hard you've been hit.
No, it's an absurd to what you're saying. So you're saying Chico Xavier was a liar. He didn't put it. I'm not saying it cannot happen, but I'm saying there's no guarantee. The person might be reincarnated, but the person might be in another place. Yeah. Once you disincarnate, you see so many other people you love. Maybe you don't care about meeting these people anymore. There's so many things that might happen. But if you say something that's outside of the sweetie things I want to hear, tough.
Yeah, you mentioned Chico Xavier, and for instance, in the series from André Luis Spirit, we are limited to the description of someone who he described what he saw under the condition that he was.
Right.
We were seeing through his eyes. We can't guarantee that everywhere is like that. Mm-hmm. As again, the Oasis, the Bedouin can tell you for sure this is everything that exists in the world.
Yeah.
This little pond, this date tree here, and some camels, and my family. That's it. The world ends here. No, we can't guarantee that. It takes so many years for you to eat dates from the tree. Well, it doesn't. He works for a date tree, but it doesn't work for other trees or
Of course.
So we are limited, very limited in our perception.
Where did you live? Where did you learn your English?
I learned in Brazil, and then I lived in the UK for 10 years.
Right. Why am I asking that? Because what you said just caught my attention to something else. Once I took some members of my family to the US, and I have a very brilliant nephew, and that was the first time he went abroad. And then when he came back, he said to me something very significant. He said, "Uncle, now I know that life can be much better than what we have here." Why? Because he opened his view. I'm not saying the US is better or worse, so it doesn't matter. But you have lived in Britain. You have a different view than a person that lives in Curitiba, as you do. You have never lived abroad in Curitiba, right? So the more experience you have, the broader is your view. Doesn't mean that you know everything, but it's more likely to accept things different. So it's true. Flammarion was perfect because he was very honest on what he knows, what he doesn't. There's a question by Gaspar, I believe.
Yes, we have, from Rui Gaspar. Thank you, watching from France. Do you believe at the fusion of sciences, philosophy, and spiritism at the future, just like Jesus predicted? So what's
saying. Yeah, there's a saying, Gaspar. I think by Kardec, he says, not all the religions, not everyone's going to be a spiritist in the future, but all the religions will be spiritualistic or something. I mean, the words I don't really know. But I believe it applies the same here. Not necessarily sciences will say, spiritism is the thing. Yeah, let's go for it. Let's believe in spiritism. But I do believe there is going to be a merge, a conversation between science and not non-science. One of my relatives, which is a scientist, after he was already 50, 60, he started doing Tai Chi Chuan, that dance, right? And he's a physicist. He says, what the master says is energy is not energy. Energy is something else. Because his mind is the mind of a physicist, right? But he does, and he loves doing Tai Chi Chuan because it talks to himself, talks to his soul, probably. So I think this is what's going to happen. We're going to be more flexible in both ways to understand things. Spiritists and religions will be less of believers on hocus pocus things, and science will be more flexible to understand things that might be there, which is exactly the position of Camille Flammarion. He's open to see. He says, might be, might be not, but I'm here to see and not to deny. I think that's what's going to happen, certainly. Maybe it will take centuries, I don't know.
Yeah. And we have to divide and subdivide our sciences into quarters, so that we can handle them. Otherwise it would be difficult to start to understand everything in one go. We need that. It's part of our development. Perhaps one day everything will be together, will merge together.
Mm-hmm.
We also have Lucas. Lucas, hi. Are you connected with Brazil Medicine Doctor and Spirit Association? Greetings from Poland.
Hello. I think, Lucas, you're talking about the Brazilian Spiritist Medical Association, right?
Yeah.
The AMA.
Yeah.
Huh? I'm not personally connected to them. I'm not from this field of medicine, but I know they're very, very strong. They have a lot of meetings. I'm not sure how much they are studying, as I think they should, science and spiritualism. But I'm sure they're very active there. I don't know if Munir could say something more to that.
No, yes. Basically, what I know from the work that they do is that.
But again, Lucas, if you want to, it's called AMA, Associação. Maybe you can put there, Associação Médica Brasileira. And I'm sure if you send anything in English, they'll understand. They'll be able to respond. Associação Médica Brasileira.
Yes, but there is also the British Medical Association.
And US as well.
In English, yeah.
Yeah. Perfect. Ireland, British, the Army. Oh, cool. Oh, there it is.
Yeah.
Cool.
So
this is fantastic, isn't it? We're talking things that just show on the screen. This is science happening.
Wonderful. Yeah. Okay, thank you very much to you all who are watching us, making your comments, putting your questions. I'll just make some announcements. So if you thought that last week we had the last part 3 was the last one about Camille Flammarion's biography, I'll tell you that no, that wasn't the last one. We have a final part, the 4th one, next Sunday. In 2 weeks. Not next Sunday, the following one, 18th of February. Charles will be here actually to conclude the biography of Camille Flammarion. Can you imagine? We were preparing that for just one meeting, one talk of about 1 hour, when Charles found out this wonderful book, yes, with details about Camille Flammarion's biography. Actually, it was his autobiography. And the fact that we couldn't find translations of these books. So as far as we know, there's only in French. And we decided then to go in details about his biography, his autobiography. So to give people who don't speak French the opportunity to learn more about Camille Flammarion. So you stay there on Facebook and YouTube. So it can be checked, watched by people at any time. So in 2 weeks' time, Sunday again, 7 p.m. UK time, GMT, Charles will be here to finish then the biography of Camille Flammarion. We also have studies. We have the Spiritist Center for Peace holding this study on Wednesday, 12 noon, London time. Is the study of the book Heaven and Hell and the Gospel According to Spiritism. So everyone is welcome. We have here the code for Zoom and also the passwords for those who want to join us. Everyone is welcome to join us in this study. We also have the study of the Mediums book on Saturdays, 10:30 a.m. UK time, coordinated by Guilherme Dias, Charles Kempf, and myself. Again, everyone welcome to join us. And also you have here the code and the password for the Zoom room where we have the meeting. And we want to thank Kardec Radio for allowing us to use the studio and making possible to bring to you these series of talks about these important people for Spiritism. And this work was basically this series. They are organized by the Spiritist Center for Peace, and also with the support of the British Union of Spiritist Society, the Irish Spiritist Federation, and also Cardiac Radio. So I thank you all very much indeed for your presence here, for watching. And if you enjoyed it, please give us a like. It's always very, very important. And I hope to see you in 2 weeks' time for the final part of the autobiography of Camille Flammarion. So for now, thank you very much. Thank you, Caldini. Very nice to have you here today.
Thank you so much, man. Goodbye, all.
Thank you.
Ciao.
Bye-bye.